Malaysia, they just made it mandatory, and they also added more branches. We also have more coming up soon in the next couple of months of the newly added banks in the region. You might have heard from us about these because we do send out, communications. We do communicate these with you. But just a quick overview, you might see some familiar names that have been added. In fact, some of them have been on board for a while, and they just made it mandatory to use confirmation.com for audit requests. For example, HSBC Malaysia, they just made it mandatory, and they also added more branches. We also have more coming up soon in the next couple of months. For example, we have ANZ Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia coming on board next month. And in the Philippines, we have Security Bank and PNB coming live next month. And in fact, these two banks will be mandated from the get-go, so they will no longer accept paper or email requests anymore. All right, so after going through all those banks, right, so how exactly do we use the confirmation platform? So this is where I will start to share my screen. All right. I believe you will be able to see my screen now. Under the media player, if the window has not already enlarged by itself, you can enlarge it yourself so that you can see the window in a larger scale. All right, so for those of you who answered the first question, thank you again. So now I know that it looks like there was a 60-40 split as to people who do have their accounts and those who don't. So for those of you who do not already have an account, it's very simple. Simply go to confirmation.com, click sign in, and when you get to this page, simply click on sign up. And put in the details as required on the screen. My screen is taking some time to load. Right, so then just enter your email address. Put in your work email address instead of a personal email address to get validated faster. I'm just going through the process here just to show you. In the next step, you are a requester, so select the first option under type of user. Next, you are an accounting firm, so select that. And then when you click next, when you have to create a profile. So if you already have if your firm is already existing on our platform, it will say so. So for example, I already have, my firm has already been signed up and I already have some offices here. So in this case, do click on this office name, and if there's a lot, especially for the bigger firms, do scroll through it to find your own office. And the reason I say this is because if you already have an office and you register into that, you will be able to use your account a lot faster. Whereas if you create a new office, you will need to get validated, and that might delay the usage of your account. And if you don't, or if your firm is not already registered, then go ahead and fill in the name that you see on this, the firm name and the office name, etc. Basically, all the fields that are required here, indicated by the red asterisk, and fill it up. It's like a normal, account creation form. So this should be pretty easy. And once you've done that, go ahead and click next, and then you will be able to create your profile. And once if you've created your profile and you receive an email from our validations team, do take the time to respond. Don't ignore that, because there have been cases where auditors who ignore the validation team, which means that they do not get validated, they then go ahead and send out a request. And then they wait for a long time for a reply, but they never get this. And that is because when you're not validated, your requests are not sent to the bank. So you do need to get validated. So do not ignore this email if our validations team emails you. All right, so once you have your account up and going, you are validated, you can go ahead and log in. what you see here is the dashboard. So when you log in, typically you might find that there is a pop-up that shows up. And I would advise that you take a second to read that pop-up, because we usually use these pop-ups to share about new banks that have come on board. So I know that it's our human nature, right? Using the internet for so long, when you see a pop-up, it is habit to just close it and get rid of it. But in this case, I would urge you to take a second to just read through the list, because you might find that some of your clients' banks have been newly added, and you can then add that bank into your use that bank, and send out the request to those banks on confirmation.com. All right, so besides the pop-up, you can see on the screen right here, the dashboard, you have a client list square. So if your firm has been using Confirmation for a while, you might have your client profile already existing. So you might be able to search there if your team has shared it with you. And after a while of using confirmation.com, you will be able to, you might want to have an overview of all the statuses. You can see it right from the beginning right here. You can see how many requests you have pending, how many are in need more information, how many have been completed, etc. Similar with the client authorization, you might receive an email saying, your client has authorized, and you have multiple clients. You are able to click and see who sent you that authorization. We have a few quick links to reports right here. I'll show you the reports section at the end of the demo, but here are a few quick links. And we have a few other quick links here that are not related to the reports, including add a new client, which I'll show in just a few seconds. We have also statistics here and updates that basically gives you, news updates that we want to share. All right. So let's say you are logging in and you have checked with the admin team that your client profile doesn't already exist on the system, or if you're the first person to use it, you need to create a new client profile. What do you do? All you need to do is click on Add New Client and put in the details as seen on the screen right here. So as usual, putting in a form, when you see a red asterisk, that means it's mandatory. So let's just put in the required information. So ABC Private Limited. Engagement number is your own engagement number that you can find from your engagement manager. So in this case, I'm just going to put my engagement number. Under authorized signer information, now, usually for authorized signer, this will, the number of signers will depend on the bank mandate, because that, usually the bank requires you to put in the total number of signers according to their records. But in this case, just add in the first person, anyone you have information for. So, the person one, put in their details, put in their address. And if your client is not based in the United States, remember to uncheck this, because it's happened a few times where even myself, I've forgotten to do that, and I'm looking for, where is the country, and it's not there because that's not the list of countries. Uncheck this, and you can select the right country right here. And then put in the rest of the details as needed, and you can save. So you can just leave this alone. You do not need to send the registration to a client. Leave that checkbox alone and click Save to save your client profile. All right, so I'm going to skip that step because I already have a client profile created. So we'll go into this company called Bridgeton. And in the client profile, we've made it such that you can follow the steps easily. So we've called it, step 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's go step by step. So in step 1, if you need to modify the company name, that's how you do it, by clicking on Modify. And if you recall, I was mentioning about the authorized signer. If you need to add more signers, you can simply click on Add Signer right here and put in the details as explained before. Again, ignore this part, do not click it, and click on Save. And while we're still in step 1, I would like to show you this collaborative function under Lead right here that I've highlighted on the screen. So if you're working in a team, click on Modify/Share, And this is where you can share the client profile with your team. For example, you want to make sure that this person can access Bridgeton Private Limited, click their name and add them to the list. So then this person will be able to see the client profile as a shared auditor. As a shared auditor, I'm going to reassign my account to show you how it looks like when I'm a shared auditor. So as a shared auditor, all these previously orange buttons are now grayed out because a shared auditor can just view and they can look at all the requests right here, but they can't actually take any action. So they can't add a signer, add accounts, request authorization or confirmations. But that's not a problem. The shared auditor can make themselves the lead auditor at any time. So I'm going to make myself the lead auditor again. And that's how I get their orange buttons back. So this is a way that teams have generally used, engagement teams have generally used this collaboration tool to work between themselves. For example, one person would create, the client profile, and then the next time another person would then go in to create the account, request authorization, and maybe someone else will initiate the confirmation request. If there's a divvy up, if there's a division of such tasks, you can always use this to collaborate among each other. That is also how you share the client profile with new members who have joined. All right, so moving on to step 2, we will then add the bank account detail by clicking Add. As you can see, we have a few other types of confirmations that you can request. For example, we also do legal confirmations, employee benefits, and creditor-debtor confirmations. But in this case, we'll just do financial, which is just banks. And here we can type in the keyword to find the financial responder. So I'm just going to search Singapore right here, and I'll see all the banks that are under Singapore. So my client has an account here, so I'm just going to click on this particular bank. All right, so on this page right here, you will see that there are some responder instructions. So it is crucial to read the instructions. We usually have a link here. So do take a second to click through and read in detail these instructions. And the reason I say this is because each bank they have their own set of requirements. So one bank might need an audit confirmation request letter that needs to be signed additional to the authorization request. Another bank might need you to put in a different information than what is stated in the fields that you can see later on, etc., etc. Different banks have different requirements, and that is why it is really important to read these instructions, because let's say if there is a really important requirement by the bank and you've missed it out because because you didn't read the responder instructions, it will only delay your request. And because we want fast responses, it is very recommended to read this. Take a second to read it, and even if it's the second year of you using confirmation for this client, you could always come back here to read the responder instructions in case the bank has maybe put in different requirements. It's always a good practice to read this part before going ahead. All right, so after reading the responder instructions, we can click Next. And this is where we can select the form. So most banks in the region, in the Asia region, they use this form called Client Consolidated Form. And what this means, and this Client Consolidated Form, they could have in the beginning, it's called APAC or Hong Kong or Singapore. The point is that when you see Client Consolidated, this means that you only need to send one request per legal entity per balance date. So let's say your client Bridgeton, right? That's one legal entity. They have 10 accounts at ANZ Singapore. So all you need to do is really just click send ANZ Singapore one request, and the bank will actually respond on all assets and liabilities that your client has at the bank. So this includes, all their accounts, maybe all their, if they have loans there, if they're a guarantor there, anything that the client has at the bank will be confirmed through one single request. So let's say your client has 10 accounts and you decide to send them 10 different client consolidated requests. That is considered duplicate requests. What does duplicate requests mean for you? It means that you're paying too much, you're paying extra, more than you need to. And it also slows down your request because the bank has to sort through all these duplicate requests and take the time to send it back to you, to deny them because they are duplicate requests, and that just makes things slower. So, moral of the story is when you have a client consolidated request, one legal entity, one balance date, one request. All right. Now, filling in the client consolidated form, you simply go through the steps. Again, where there is a red asterisk, that is the mandatory field. So you need to select the signers. So let's say the first two signers are the signers required by the bank records. So click them both. If you only need one, then simply click one. So in this case, we'll click on two. You can skip this part because it's not mandated. Account ID, I'm just going to put in some numbers. And going forward through the rest of the form, if there's no red asterisk, you can leave it alone. You don't have to put it in. Some banks do ask that you put in some of these details. Again, that's why it's important to read the bank responder instructions. Most banks don't need it. Some banks, they do want you to put it in, even though it's not mandated. It helps them. So that is why bank responder instructions read. All right, so then include a list of authorized signers. So typically, most auditors leave this as no, so just leave it there. And once you've put in all those details that are needed, click Save. All right, and that's all you need to do to create your account. Once you've done that in step 2, move on to step 3 and click on Request. In this case, I already have the authorization from the 2 signers that I need, but just to show you, when you click on Request, you can actually send, you can simply click on let's say one signer has multiple entities, you can tick the entity that they haven't sent the authorization for, and if there are other signers you need to request from, you can do that as well, and click Request. So that's all you need to do. The signer will receive that request, give their authorization online very easily, and once they're done, you will receive it back immediately right here. So once you've received the authorization, go straight to step 4 and click on Initiate Confirmations. So here I'll select all signers. And here's where you need to select the as of date. So very importantly, as of date is the balance date. It is not today's date, so don't select 27th of October if that's when you're sending out the request. Select the year-end date, the balance date that you want to ask from the bank. So let's say if it's 30th of September, select that date. And in fact, you can actually send your requests in advance, 90 days in advance. So for the 31st of December, you can already send out your requests now. And what this does is actually, it's sent to the bank's review queue. The bank can actually pre-process your request, and once 1st of January comes around, your request will actually automatically move into their processing queue, which means that your request will be among the top, which means that the bank these banks, because they process requests on a first come, first served basis, because yours is at the top, yours will be among the first that they process. So if you send your request now, that will ensure that your request can be processed faster because they're at the top of the queue. Let's say for this request, let's send it out for the 31st of December. So we are future dating our request. And once we have selected the balance date, you can, if you have a lot of responder listed, you can use the filter to narrow down the options. So So in this case, let's send it to ANZ Singapore that we've just created earlier. Put in the engagement number. Click on next. And you will see the price overview. So here I have a centralized payment set up already, which is why I don't need to put in any detail. So if your firm wants to set up a centralized billing, they can reach out to our customer support team. They can help your team set up centralized billing so you don't have to use a personal credit card to make payments. Otherwise, there will be an option here to put in the credit card details to pay for the request. So even though I have centralized billing, I'm able to see the finalized amount. So I am educated on the amount that I'm about to spend. All right, I'm happy with the responder I'm about to send to. I'm going to click on initiate, and that's all I need to do. What happens now is the request is going, because it's a future dated request, it's going in the review queue or in the pre-processing queue of the bank. They can pre-process it, or if it's a previous date, so let's say it's the last date of September, the bank will receive it immediately in the processing queue, and depending on where you are in the queue, the bank will then process your request and they can send it back to you directly here. All right, so how do you manage your requests? So firstly, you can see all the pending requests here, obviously. So these are the ones that are still waiting for a response from the bank. And besides that, you can also see some completed or denied requests. So to see those, click in and you can look at all your requests. And you can actually see the completed requests. Click into them and you can see, okay, it's already completed. There are there's usually a confirmation PDF that the bank uploads for you. Once you click, you can actually download and open up the PDF. And yeah, so that's basically your confirmation. You can export this entire thing if you want. Or let's say after you've opened up the confirmation PDF, you find that, oh, it's a bit, it has a wrong balance date. You can click on reconfirm and tell the bank, oh, this is actually wrong. You've used the wrong balance date. Or let's say, any other wrong details. You can, you can double check with the bank directly by using the reconfirm functionality. That's a free functionality to send it directly back to the bank. Now, another thing that you can use is another thing that happens is that when the bank notices that maybe you have entered the wrong account number, for example, they will send it back to you under need more info. So in fact, we've heard from a few auditors who received an email saying, oh, there is an update on your request, and they couldn't find it in completed or denied. And they were looking for it, but they didn't realize that it's under need more info. It's pretty easy. Click into need more info and view the request itself. And you can scroll down and you can see that the bank person said, okay, please give me more information. All right, so now you know you need to give the bank more information. Usually it's more specific. So click on respond and you can give the information they need. So you say, here is the information. If you need to upload anything, click on browse/upload and you can send the file back to the bank. And click send and the bank will receive it. Once they receive it, they can process it and they can send it back to you. If it's completed, it will go under here, under completed. And in some cases, some requests are denied. You can actually open it up. It's similar to the completed confirmations. If you open it up, you will be able to see the reason your request was denied. The bank usually puts in an explanation. If you have any further questions, you can always reach out to our team. Right. So when you have any questions, right, what do you do if you need help? There is this orange tab that you can see on the screen right here that I'm trying to show with my mouse. It says need help. Just click onto it and you can actually go to the help center. This is a repertoire of or a library of a lot of articles that we've put together over the years because from all the frequently asked questions, you can get immediate answers by going to the help centers there. But if you have a more detailed or complicated question, you can always reach out to our customer support team by emailing them here or calling them up. And our team will do our best to help you. So for example, if you have a request, you don't really understand the explanation from the bank, you can always reach out to us and ask us. All right, so that is how you send a request, manage your requests when they've come back to you under completed, denied, or need more info, and this is how you get help. So besides that, now that we are done with sending and managing our requests, let's go into the reporting function. So under Reports tab, while my page is loading. All right, so under Select Report, you'll see that there are quite a few reports. They're kind of self-explanatory. So I'll show you the top reports that are most frequently used. So under the Requester report, the in-network responder report is very frequently used by auditors all around the world. So I'm not going to filter anything for now, because I just want to show you how it looks like. Basically, this is a list of all the responders available on confirmation.com. I'll just take a second to say that this is a demo. This is my demo account, so all the information you see here are fake. So these banks may or may not actually be on our platform, but yeah, on your platform, when you actually log in, you'll see the actual information. So you can actually export it into Excel. Apply your filter, and you can filter out, according to the country, and look for the banks that your clients have accounts in. And that's how you can identify all the banks that your clients have, whether they are in the confirmation.com network, and whether you can send requests through our platform. So this is how most auditors, use and cross-reference and check whether they can send requests on confirmation.com. You can also do the filtering right here if you want to drill down, use the country, or you can use this state/region once you've selected a country, and you can filter down your search. So this is the in-network responders list. This is how you see the full list of banks available in our network. I do suggest downloading this or in getting a fresh list quite frequently, because of how fast we are getting banks on board. And again, if you pay attention to the pop-ups, you might be able to keep up with it, and this will give you the full global list if needed. Now, you see under here called administration reports. So we do have supervisor users on the platform. So among your firm, you can appoint a few people to be supervisors, and they can actually have extra access. And one of the most frequently used reports that a supervisor will need to look at is the Office Activity Report. This is a very detailed report that gives every single transaction done by the firm's team, by the employees at the firm. You can view and you can see every single transaction. You can do a date range for up to 3 months. And the supervisor can then see every single transaction. So as you can see here, you see the country. Let's say the supervisor is overseeing several countries or several offices. They can see where it was, which office the transaction was sent out from. You can see exactly who sent it out, the name and the email of the auditor who sent the request, the client, their purchase receipt number, and the amount. And let's say the auditor actually recalled the request because they realized that they sent out a wrong information, so they quickly recalled it. There will be a credit, so they can see the credit here, and so on and so forth. So this is a super detailed billing report, very often used by supervisors by all firms around the world. And if you have any questions, or if you want to appoint supervisors in your firm, feel free to reach out to our customer support team. They will also help you to turn the selected users into supervisors. And the last part that I want to show that a supervisor can do under the admin tab is that they can manage clients, which means that the supervisor can maybe reassign all these clients to a newbie, to a new joiner, by using this functionality. So let's say I want to reassign all of these clients to this person. I can reassign all of them. Another thing that the supervisor can do is manage the auditor user. So let's say someone left, you can actually click on their name and deactivate their account. So that's how supervisors can manage the user access. So that is the demo. That's how we can send, manage requests, and how we can access the reports, and how supervisors can manage and housekeep their confirmation platform. All right, so we are done with the demo portion. I will take this chance to come back to our presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And it is now time for the Q&A session. I will actually now pass the mic on to my colleague Alex, who has been looking at our Q&A box and will be going through the questions. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Dee. That was very informative. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has already asked questions to us. We very much appreciate all the questions that have come through. Because this session will be obviously live, if you've got any pressing questions that you feel Dee hasn't covered yet already, or something you would like to know, please paste it in the Q&A. Either myself will answer it live over the call right now. If we can't quite get to your question as well, we will be sending follow-ups if we've missed it over email as well. So not to worry, if we don't answer your question in these last few minutes, we'll certainly make sure that we can get you an answer. So I'll just wait for some more questions to come through already. Fantastic to see so many questions coming through. This is fantastic. Okay, that's fantastic. So I just had a good question come through around like international banks and requesting. So as Dee sort of mentioned earlier in this presentation, we've sort of talked about some of the new banks that were on board and new ones that had joined in regions. I would just like to reassure everyone on the call that regardless of where your client and your audit firm and the bank is based, you can request any bank or financial institution based restrictions. We're a global network. A good example of this, it would be, say, for example, my client has their headquarters in Singapore. They have some accounts that are domiciled in Bank of America, USA, and my audit firm is based in Malaysia. I can absolutely still send this Bank of America request to them, and it will be completed just fine. Banks will always provide tips on how to submit to them in their responder instructions, so do make sure that you're taking the moment to review these instructions before you set up your requests. And look, if you're still unsure about a particular bank, you are very welcome to search on our Customer Support Help Center for extra guidance. Oh, fantastic. I'd just like to let everyone know there is so many questions coming through, and I really appreciate and value each one. I'll do my very best to get through as many as we can, and my fantastic team will also help to be responding to some of the questions as well. Okay, so we've had some great questions. A couple have come through already around the digital authorization process. So we'll sort of break this up and I'll do my best to explain. So someone has asked about the digitally drawn signature and the authorization process, and that's a very, very good thing to get clarified. So it's always best to have the client signers provide the authority that matches the bank records as closely as possible. Because at the end of the day, it's the clerk at the bank that follows their bank's processes to validate the authorization. So the more perfect your signers can sign and provide their authority and company seal or stamp if that's applicable, the better the chance you'll have of having no issues with the approval. Certainly one thing I would recommend is making sure that you give your client signer a heads up that you'll be doing this digital process, letting them know that they will receive an email asking for their authorization in advance of you doing it, so there's no confusion from them and they don't think it's junk or spam. Also, when they're providing their authorization, we do recommend them to either sign digitally or upload a scanned PDF with their authorization and company seal if that's applicable, as that closely matches the bank's record. And ultimately, if you are seeing the authorization given from your client and you're not quite happy with it, say, for example, they've sort of just drawn a scribble or they put in their initials and we're not confident the bank will approve that, you can actually contact our customer support team and we can help guide you on how to recall that authorization and get the client to try again. So Dee, if I could ask if you could jump back into the demo quite quickly so we can show everyone where to check for that client authorization. So do you mind jumping in and going to the client that you prepared earlier?
I'm sharing my screen now. So for the attendees, if your media player window is not enlarged, please enlarge it so you can see.
Yep. So once you're on the client information tab, under the client authorization section, there's a button that says view log. So you would click on that and that will bring up a history of all the authorizations that have taken place recently for that client. If you were to hover over view, you'll see one of two options. One of the options will show you if the client's provided a digital signature, you'll be able to preview that here, or it'll give you a link to download the file that your client uploaded so you can review that too. And this is just quite useful to just do this simple check before you send off your requests, just to have a bit more confidence in the authorization that your client has provided. And especially if they're new to the digital process, with some clients this will certainly be a brand new thing for them. Okay, so there has been some questions come through. When Dee shared earlier, when they were initiating, there was a central payment on file, and most of you might not see that option because that is actually a different payment method that we do offer some firms. Essentially, it's where your firm office can put a specific credit card on file. So this payment method is saved as the default billed card. We find this can really help with some efficiencies, especially during the busy December or March year-end seasons, because it saves you having to input card details manually each time, and it helps sort of track those expenses in relation to client engagements. If this is of interest to you and your audit firm, please do reach out via email to our customer support team. We will be providing the email link at the end of the session, and our support team will be certainly happy to work with you and your finance team in setting that up for you. Okay, fantastic. So some people have asked about registration, specifically in relation to clients. Clients don't actually need to register for the confirmation platform. So the two parties we expect to be registered and validated are the authorized bank responders and the auditors themselves. We try to make the process as simple for the client as possible, which is where we send them the authorization link over email. They click on the link, they provide their authorization, and they save and close it, and that is it. So this is intended to be kept as simple as possible. We just don't want to take up a lot of your client's time. There is an optional feature for clients to register on your request and to be able to see some additional information. Again, that's at your discretion on whether that's needed, and the clients can't interfere with the actual sending or downloading the confirmations. They just get a view-only access. So we typically don't recommend that unless your client's pretty persistent on it, because again, that client authorization process is kept simple and easy for them as possible. Okay, fantastic. So there are some questions coming through around sort of rechecking with the bank on the responses they got. So Dee did briefly touch upon this earlier in the training, but I will just elaborate for everyone on the call. So the great thing about confirmation is that you do get a completed response from the bank and you're reviewing that response and you have some questions on it, or it doesn't quite reconcile with what your clients provided and you need to sort of clarify that with the bank. You can do that via the reconfirm option. So it allows you to send that request back to the bank completely free of charge with the questions that you would like to ask them. And it will go back to the bank clerk and the team who originally processed your request for them to review and respond accordingly. So, in some instances, this could be that a good example is you've got a balance on one of the accounts that you saw and you don't quite think that might reconcile with the balance that your client has told you that was at a certain date. Certainly that reconfirm option would be the method I would use to question that with the bank directly. So Dee, do you mind jumping back into the demo so we can demonstrate on where we can find this reconfirm option?
Sure. Great.
Fantastic. So when we're in the client screen, all that we would need to do is click on the completed under confirmation statuses. And then next to the request in particular that we'd like to reconfirm with the bank, we will click on view. And as long as we're the lead auditor, so we're the registered auditor in charge of managing this client on the platform, the reconfirm button will appear down the bottom of this window, and clicking on that will allow us to be taken to a screen with a text field that allows us to provide comments to the bank. We always recommend being detailed as you can and making sure that your query is very easily understood, so there's no confusion from a bank's end when they receive that request back. Couple of questions coming through on engagement number. This was shown when Dee was creating a new client in the demo. Engagement number is simply a field that allows you to enter your project code or your job code for this particular client that you're auditing. Some audit firm settings may make this mandatory with us to make sure that the client expensing system is easier and sort of streamline that finance process. Otherwise, you may find that it's not mandatory and that no one from your firm has made this a requirement. If you do have job codes or project codes for certain clients, definitely recommend taking advantage of that and writing in that job code. It can really make your finance team's lives a lot easier and your life a lot easier with expenses. Someone has asked them why they're not seeing the administrator tab on their confirmation account. So this is in reference to the supervisor access that Dee brought up earlier in the session. So this is an access that you can apply to have on behalf of your firm with us. It just allows for some extra functionality that's really relevant to administrative users or supervisor users or people that just need a little bit more insight. So certainly we find a lot of executive assistants or finance team members or senior auditors will request this access. It gives them the additional reporting available so they can see billing information across all auditors and clients for their firm. It also allows them to manage the registered auditors and to also en masse move across clients. So typically we recommend that firms have at least somebody that does have this access. It does make lives a lot easier every busy season to sort of help out with those efficiencies and prevent a lot of creating extra clients so that's not needed or deactivating auditors that no longer work for your firm. So if you are interested in either finding out who has this access for your firm or that you would like to apply for access for the firm, please do reach out to our customer support team and we can pass you on the information on what we need from you to get this access set up. It is a completely free option, but we are very careful about making sure that you're the appropriate person from your firm to have this elevated access. So we will be showing, as a reminder, the customer support email at the end of the session. So reach out to us if you'd like to either find out who has this access already, or if you would like to apply for access yourself. Okay, I am conscious that we are very rapidly approaching the end of our allotted training time. So again, thank you so much for all the questions that have come through. We've really tried our very best to either answer them live, or my lovely team has answered them while I've been talking. But if we've missed any, or we've told you, we'll get over to you via email. Rest assured we will do that as soon as possible. So Dee, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Alex, for answering all these questions. I know I can see that there are still more questions streaming in, so thank you for all these questions. We are trying to answer them. And if you have a question that's not been responded to, we will get to you. Don't worry. And if you think of any other questions after this session, you can reach out to our customer support team at the email address on the screen. And feel free to visit our resources that are available on our Help Center that can be found in the orange tab on the confirmation platform. And yeah, so thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. And before we go, we do have a survey that we would love for you to fill in at the end. So I'm going to end this webinar, and if you could just give us a couple of seconds to fill in the survey, it would be very much appreciated. So again, thank you to everyone, and have a good rest of the day. Goodbye.